After a boy disappears near a cave, a family legacy of blood and horror is unleashed upon the town. I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your terrifying host. If you're already part of our pack, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this, or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. My name is Tobias Mercer. I was born in Missoula, Montana, on a stretch of land where the mountains loom like sentinels and the forest speaks only in warnings. I've lived here my whole life, on the same ranch my father raised me, the same one where I learned to track and kill things most people don't believe exist. When I was 10, my father told me what really lived in the hills beyond Rattlesnake Ridge. Not bears, not wolves, though we had those too, but something far older, more deliberate, more cruel. Lycans. Shapeshifters. Wolves that wear human skin when the moon isn't watching. He didn't explain it with stories. He showed me scars, deep, disfiguring ones. A slash that ran across his ribs like the claw of a bear, though he insisted it wasn't. Another on his thigh, jagged and dark, from a bite he said nearly killed him. I believed him because he didn't ask me to. He trained me in silence, how to track in snow without leaving a trail, how to distinguish a normal footprint from one too long, with claws digging in, how to smell sulfur in the wind and know it meant something evil was near. By the time I was 15, I'd already helped him kill 2. Neither looked like men when we found them. By then, they were something else entirely, feral, twisted, monstrous. We burned the bodies, as was tradition. After my mother died, my father changed, more violent, less patient. He stopped leaving the house at night and drank too much whiskey. The hunts stopped. So did the explanations. He said the blood was quiet now, that we had bought peace. He never told me what that meant. Not until he disappeared. It happened on a night in mid-January, 4 years ago. Bitter cold, wind howling through the eaves. I found the front door wide open at dawn, snow crusted on the welcome mat. His boots gone. No footprints in the snow, no blood, no sign of a struggle. Just gone. I searched for weeks, tracked every game trail, searched the nearby towns. The police gave up early. I didn't. I never stopped looking, until last night. Last night, something came back. It started with a cow, one of the Black Angus from my eastern pasture. Its body was found torn in half, intestines frozen in the dirt, its throat ripped out. The fence wasn't broken, the gate was still latched. But the hoof prints showed panic. It had tried to run. From what, I don't know. But the tracks that surrounded the carcass didn't belong to any predator I knew. They looked human, barefoot, but the toes were wrong, longer, with impressions that could only be claws, and the stride was too long, as if whoever walked on 2 feet could run like a deer. I followed them as far as the tree line, where the tracks vanished, not faded, not buried, just gone. I brought the body to the local vet, said it might have been a bear attack. She didn't believe it. There's no tearing, she said. No gnawing, just clean cuts, like something knew where to kill. Later that night, the wind changed. That smell came back. Sulfur, rotten meat, burnt iron. I didn't sleep. I loaded the shotgun with silver slugs, locked every door, and sat on the porch till dawn with a lantern and my father's hunting knife. My hands shook the way his used to. Something was coming. I could feel it in my teeth. This morning, I got a call. A boy had gone missing on the other side of town. 14 years old. His bike was found twisted in a ditch, the frame bent like aluminum foil, his helmet shredded. No blood, no drag marks, just a single track leading into the woods behind his house. A print, too large for a man, No shoe tread. I knew that shape. I'd seen it before, years ago, after one of our earliest hunts. My father called it a sign. The first warning. I went back to the barn and opened the chest he told me never to touch. Inside, his journals, old weapons, maps of the mountain trails, marked with strange symbols, circles, crosses, names scratched out with red ink, and at the very bottom, a sealed envelope, my name written in his handwriting. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I pulled out the jacket he always wore, the one with the reinforced leather and stitched runes across the sleeves. I slipped it on, loaded the rifle, packed my bag. If what came back is what I think it is, then I'm not hunting a beast. I'm hunting the thing that took my father. Maybe worse. Maybe something he created. And if the blood is calling, I won't run. I'll answer. By midday, the snow began to melt under a gray sky, exposing mud and rot beneath. I drove my truck down the old Forest Service road toward the cabin where the boy had vanished. Locals said it was an animal. I knew better. The boy's name was Jeremy Weller. 14. He'd lived at the edge of the Bitterroot National Forest. The same edge where my father once found a severed limb buried in the snow after a blizzard. The connection wasn't lost on me. The road was blocked halfway by a fallen pine. I parked, grabbed my pack, and continued on foot. The air was dense. No birds, no wind, just silence pressing against my ears like weight. I reached the property by late afternoon. The front door was open. No police tape, no sign of active investigation, just abandonment. Inside, furniture was overturned, cabinets broken. Blood smeared in wide arcs across the floor. Not a pool, just enough to say something had bled and moved, dragging or being dragged. I found the boy's phone under a broken table, cracked but still flashing. I powered it down and pocketed it. Outside, something caught my eye near the tree line. A piece of fabric, fluttering on a branch. It was part of a jacket, ripped, stained with something dark. I crouched, inspecting the snow. That same shape again. A track, long, bare. Toes too far apart, nails sunken deep. Whatever made it wasn't human. Not anymore. I followed the trail for almost a mile, through brush, over rocks, into thicker forest. Then it ended abruptly in a clearing. But there was something there, half buried under pine needles and ice. Bones, dozens of them, human and animal, mixed. Skulls with teeth missing, rib cages gnawed open, and at the center, a stone circle blackened by scorch marks. This wasn't just a kill site. It was a ritual place. Old. Reused. I knew this layout. My father once showed me diagrams from a book he kept locked in his desk. Places where lichens nested, where they bred, where they fed. And there, stuck between two stones, was something worse than the bones. A metal dog tag. It read, D. Mercer, my father's. It had been bent in the middle, as if crushed between teeth. I stood frozen. My breath hung thick in the air. Either he'd fought here, or he'd been taken here. Either way, his scent, his blood, had drawn them back, or had never left. A low vibration moved through the ground like distant thunder. I turned. Nothing. I left the clearing quickly, but the forest was different now. The shadows deeper, the silence heavier. Something was tracking me. By the time I reached the truck, the sun had dipped below the tree line. I turned the ignition. It coughed once, then died. Battery dead. That couldn't be. I'd checked it that morning. I locked the doors, loaded the shotgun, and waited. 2 hours passed. Then came the sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, snow crunching under something heavy. I peeked out the rear window, just trees. Another sound, a hand brushing the side of the truck. I turned. There it was, standing by the passenger side, half obscured by steam on the glass. 8 feet tall, muscled like a bear, but upright, covered in dark, matted hair, arms too long, fingers too sharp. And the eyes, burning yellow, focused, unblinking. It stared straight at me. I raised the shotgun, but before I could move, it was gone. No thud, no impact, just vanished into the dark. I jumped out, scanning with the flashlight. Tracks led away from the truck and vanished 10 feet in, gone, like they had never touched the ground. Back at the ranch, I opened the envelope my father left. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A hand-drawn map of the hills near Marshall Mountain, with a mark on a cave I didn't recognize. Underneath, in his handwriting, "If it returns, don't follow the trail. Follow the silence." Whatever that meant, I knew I'd find it there, or it would find me first. As I folded the map, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I answered. A voice, raspy, broken, low. "You're too late. He belongs to the pack now." Then silence. I sat in the dark for hours, holding the map, replaying the voice in my mind. It wasn't my father's, but it sounded like someone who used to be a man, someone who might still remember what it felt like to speak. The forest wasn't waiting anymore. It was calling. The next morning, I packed light. The cave marked on my father's map was 6 miles east of Marshall Mountain, just past the old lumber access trail. That land hadn't been used in over 20 years. Locals avoided it, said the trees didn't grow right there, that dogs refused to follow commands near the ridge. I knew the signs. It wasn't superstition. It was instinct. I took the truck as far as the road allowed, then hiked the last 2 miles through dense undergrowth. Snow had hardened into ice in patches. The cold bit into my legs as the wind began to shift, sharp and metallic, tinged with a familiar rot. The cave was hidden behind a slope of collapsed shale, its entrance jagged like a wound in the earth. As I approached, I saw the markings, scratches in the rock, arranged in patterns. Not random. Not human. Symbols my father had once called territorial signs, each one a warning, a claim. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. Warmer, but not comfortable, like breath from a dying animal. The walls were damp. Bones littered the ground, some fresh, some ancient, stripped clean. I kept the flashlight low, the shotgun ready. 30 feet in, I saw movement. Something shifted behind a rock outcropping. I froze, waited, then heard it, a voice, soft, human. "Help!" I rounded the corner fast, heart pounding. It was the boy. Jeremy Weller, or what was left of him. He sat against the stone wall, legs twisted unnaturally, eyes wide with terror. His clothes were torn, soaked in blood. Claw marks crisscrossed his chest. "Jeremy," I said, lowering the weapon. He looked at me like I wasn't real. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. I knelt beside him. His pulse was weak, skin burning hot. He gripped my sleeve with one hand. "They took Dad. They took him into the dark." "Your father?" I asked. "He was here?" Jeremy nodded slowly, but then his face twisted, eyes rolled back, jaw clenched. He started convulsing. Before I could stabilize him, I heard the growl, deep, measured, close, not from one creature, but 2. I backed toward the entrance, dragging Jeremy's limp body with me. The first one appeared from the shadows, taller than me by a foot, broad-shouldered, eyes like molten gold. Its skin was stretched tight over muscle, its snout still wet with blood. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. It was hunting with confidence. The second came from the side, smaller, but faster. It darted forward with impossible speed, claws catching the stone floor with a sickening screech. I fired once, center mass. The larger one flinched but didn't fall, just staggered back, snarling, then lunged. I dropped the flashlight, grabbed Jeremy, and rolled out of the way as claws raked the wall where my head had been seconds before. The smaller creature was already circling, watching, learning. I tossed the second slug into its chest. This one hit harder, splintered bone. It shrieked, recoiling into the shadows. The big one wasn't done. It came again. This time I was too slow. It knocked me off my feet, slamming my back into the cave wall. The shotgun flew from my hands. It stood over me, teeth bared, claws raised, and then it stopped, sniffed, its head tilted, eyes narrowing. It leaned in close, nose inches from mine. Then it spoke, voice distorted, animal and human at once. "You smell like him." I didn't answer. "You are his blood." The creature leaned back, snarled, and vanished into the cave's depths, dragging the wounded one with it. I sat up slowly, ribs screaming, head spinning. Jeremy was unconscious again. I grabbed the shotgun, slung him over my shoulder, and stumbled out of the cave. Outside, the wind howled. Snow started falling. I made it back to the truck just before nightfall, engine roaring to life as I hit the gas. At the hospital, I lied. Said I found the boy injured on a trail, attacked by a wild animal. They didn't press questions. They never do when it's this far north. Jeremy was stabilized, but he didn't wake. As I sat by his bed, I noticed something on his wrist. A mark. Black. Twisting. Faint, but growing. Not a wound. A brand. He'd been claimed. I went home that night, bone-tired but wired with dread. I opened the journal again, flipped to the pages with the symbols. Next to one drawing, 3 overlapping circles, my father had scribbled, "Pack hierarchy. Alphas mark blood, not always to kill, sometimes to convert." Jeremy was turning, and that meant I wasn't just hunting beasts, I was racing the clock. And worse, those things in the cave, they knew my name. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, staring at my own hands, waiting for something to change. After what I saw on Jeremy's wrist, I had to be sure I hadn't brought something back with me. I examined my skin inch by inch, searching for discoloration, bruising, anything strange. At dawn, I stripped the sheets off my bed and burned them outside. Something about the smell on them had shifted. Less human, more earth, more iron. I threw my jacket on the fire too, the one I wore into the cave. It reeked of that cave stench, sulfur and dried blood. Then I checked the barn. 2 of my goats were dead, throats torn, ribs shattered open like twigs. The third was still alive but backed into the farthest corner, shaking violently, eyes rolled white. No sign of forced entry, just blood across the hay and paw prints too large for any dog. Again bare, again clawed. They were coming closer. I spent the rest of the morning barricading every window and door in the house, reinforced the locks, nailed silver nails along the frame, the way my father taught me. I scattered salt across the thresholds and lined every bullet I had with melted down silver coins I'd saved for years. By afternoon, I went to visit Jeremy again. He hadn't woken. The nurse told me he was running a fever of 104 degrees. Doctors didn't know why. They said he wasn't fighting infection. His organs were stable. He just wouldn't respond. I went into the room alone, sat by his bed. That's when I saw it again. The mark, darker now, spreading across his forearm like a vein, black and pulsing. I reached to touch it. His eyes snapped open. He looked straight at me but didn't speak. He opened his mouth and I saw the teeth. They'd changed. Longer, sharper. The canines now pressed unnaturally into his lower lip. He closed his mouth quickly, like he was ashamed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want this." "I know," I said. They made me watch what they did to him. To who? He hesitated. Your father. My stomach turned. He's not dead, Jeremy said. Not really. What does that mean? Jeremy began to shake. The monitor beeped. I pressed the call button, but he grabbed my wrist, harder than any 14-year-old should. Don't go there again, he whispered, breath ragged. They're waiting for you. He passed out before the nurses came in. They pushed me out of the room, said he needed rest. I didn't argue. Back at the ranch, I opened the old trunk in the attic where my father had kept his weapons. I found the long knife, full tang, silver-plated, etched with words in a language I never learned. I strapped it to my side. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. A second envelope, stuck beneath the lid. It wasn't addressed to me. It was labeled, "To whoever survives." Inside were 3 photos, black and white, all of them taken decades ago. All of them featured people with the last name, Mercer. One photo showed a man with long hair and sunken eyes. His arms were wrapped in chains. Across the back of the photo, in my father's handwriting, Elias Mercer, the first marked. The second photo showed a farmhouse on fire, smoke and flame pouring from the windows. A single figure standing in the field watching it burn. The caption read, "They rejected the blood. The pack reclaimed them." The last photo stopped me cold. It was of my father, but younger, in his 20s, covered in blood, kneeling beside something just out of frame, and behind him, standing tall, was one of the creatures, a lichen. Its hand rested on his shoulder. The back read, "He made a deal." I dropped the photo. My hands were shaking. He hadn't just fought them. He hadn't just hunted them. He worked with them. I sat on the porch for hours, rifle across my knees, eyes fixed on the woods. And then I saw movement. Just past the edge of the trees. Something walked upright, slowly, not trying to hide. I raised the scope. What I saw made my blood freeze. It was a man, naked, covered in dried blood and dirt. His face was my father's, but the eyes were wrong, too wide, too yellow. He raised a hand and smiled. Then he turned and walked back into the forest. I didn't sleep that night either. I didn't tell anyone what I saw that night. Not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, but because I was afraid they would. If my father was alive, something was wrong with him. And if that thing wearing his face wasn't him, then I had to prepare for the worst. The next morning, I headed into town, not to see anyone, just to search. There were old city records stored in the basement of the Missoula Historical Society. Land deeds, newspaper clippings, birth and death certificates dating back to the 1800s. I found the Mercer name. Again and again. 5 generations ago, this land belonged to Thatcher Mercer, a trapper and fur trader. His wife and 3 children were all listed as missing. The case was closed with a single line in the town records. Presumed dead, no remains recovered. Signs of ritual activity. I kept digging. In a 1962 newspaper article, I found a photo of a younger version of my grandfather, Harlan Mercer, standing next to a burned structure deep in the forest. The headline read, "Family cabin destroyed in mysterious fire. Locals blame wolves." The article claimed that 5 bodies were found inside, but the coroner's report only listed 4. The 5th was never identified. In the margins of the article, someone had handwritten, "Debt paid." I copied everything, took photos of the pages. On my way out, I passed the old sheriff, Jim Harlow, sitting outside the diner. He watched me, didn't smile. "You stirring up graves, Mercer?" he asked. I didn't answer. He spat on the sidewalk. "Your family's got a long line of secrets. And every time someone digs, people start dying. I turned to go. Your daddy used to come around here asking the same questions. Last time I saw him, he looked like he'd seen God, or something worse. Back at the ranch, I opened the envelope again. My hands hovered over the map, this time focusing on a smaller mark, one I hadn't noticed before. A red X just north of the Bitterroot River. Not a cave, a cabin. I remembered it. Barely. When I was a kid, my father once pointed toward that stretch of woods and said, "If I ever tell you to run, you go the other way from there." I packed my gear, checked the ammo, loaded fresh silver slugs into the shotgun, strapped on the knife. Then I went. The trail to the cabin was overgrown, almost lost to time. Branches clawed at my coat, and the wind was heavy with the scent of sap and something beneath it. Decay, buried long ago but disturbed recently. When I reached it, the cabin looked more like a mausoleum than a home. Shingles missing, door hanging crooked, windows blacked out. I stepped inside. Dust hung thick in the air. Animal bones littered the floor. Old symbols were carved into the wood, some matching the journal, others unfamiliar. But what froze me was what lay in the center of the room. A skeleton, human, wrapped in chains, and next to it, a journal. Newer, untouched by time. I opened it. Inside were pages written in my father's handwriting. But these weren't logs of hunts. They were confessions. He'd known the truth for decades. He wasn't just a hunter. He had made a pact with the pack to protect our family. To be left alone, we had to give something in return. One life. Every generation. The first was Thatcher Mercer's youngest son. The next was my grandfather's sister. And the third was meant to be me. But he couldn't do it. Instead, he offered someone else. My uncle. A man I never knew existed. The pact was broken, temporarily. But they came back, because blood remembers. My hands trembled as I read the final entry. They will come for Tobias. He has the mark. He will carry the curse, or end it. As I stood, wind slammed the cabin door shut behind me. And then I saw him, my father, standing outside the broken window, watching. His face was calm, but his eyes were wrong. I stepped out, shotgun raised. "Is it really you?" I asked. He didn't answer. "You made a deal. You gave them family." He nodded. "You lied to me. Trained me to fight something you served." "I did it to protect you," he said. "From what?" He stepped closer. "From what you are." I fired. He dropped, but didn't bleed. He growled. A low, guttural sound that shook the trees. Then his body began to change, bones cracking, skin splitting, fur tearing through. It wasn't my father anymore. It was one of them. I ran, no plan, no direction, just ran. As I reached the ridge, I looked back. He didn't chase me. He stood there, half man, half monster, staring at me with eyes that used to be my father's. And I knew this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about blood. And payment. It started with a power outage. Just after dusk, the lights along Rattlesnake Ridge went out. Every house, every street lamp, every sound swallowed by stillness. Then came the dogs, barking, panicking, then silence, one by one. I was already on my way when the first emergency call crackled over the scanner. Dispatch said 2 patrol cars had gone silent, no contact for over 10 minutes. Last known location, north sector of Ridge Hollow. By the time I got to the edge of town, smoke was already rising. The first house I reached was gone, just rubble and blood. What was left of the family dog was draped across the fence like a warning. The front door was clawed in, not out. Whatever came didn't break through. It was let in. I moved fast through the streets, my rifle loaded, my knife on my thigh. Screams echoed in the dark, too far to follow, too fast to pinpoint. Then I saw them. Two shadows moving on all fours, fast, silent, calculated. They weren't hunting at random. They were sweeping the neighborhood. The next house exploded into motion. A man sprinted from the side, dragging a child behind him. He didn't make it. A creature dropped from the rooftop, crushing him with both feet. The snap of his spine echoed. The child screamed, but the second beast was already on her, pulling her into the dark like luggage. I opened fire. The first round hit the larger one in the leg, shattering bone. It stumbled, dropped. I didn't wait. 2 more slugs into its chest, then throat. It convulsed and fell. The second beast hissed, an unnatural dry sound, and bolted into the woods. I rushed to the girl. She was breathing, barely. Her leg was a mess of blood and exposed bone. I wrapped it and told her not to look behind her. Behind us, the body of the first creature was already changing. The fur receding. The face collapsing into something halfway human. Its eyes opened once more, and it spoke. Wrong blood. Then died. I carried the girl to the fire station. It was the only structure with lights, backup generator still holding. Inside, chaos. 2 firefighters dead, 1 missing an arm, blood everywhere. Deputy Kara Lovell stood behind a flipped desk, pumping shells into a shotgun with trembling hands. Her face was cut, her eyes wild. "Mercer?" she asked, lowering the gun. "Don't stop," I said. "They're still out there." I laid the girl down. Kara tied off her leg with a belt, and I moved to the map on the wall. "We need to block the north and west roads," I said. "Anything not behind a locked steel door is a death trap." She didn't ask how I knew. Outside, the screams started again. Closer. More of them now. "They're multiplying," I said. "They're not just feeding, they're claiming territory." Then the howls came. Not animal, not human. A hybrid of both. 3 distinct voices, and one deeper than the rest. Alpha. The windows shattered. Claws tore through the front door like it was paper. The first beast leapt inside. Shorter, faster, female. She lunged at Kara. I fired twice. First round caught her in the side. Second clipped her skull. She hit the wall with a crack. The next came through the back wall. Massive, broad-chested, covered in mud and fresh blood. Its jaw was broken, hanging at an angle. I recognized it. One of the things from the cave. It charged. I tackled Kara, shoving her to the ground as it lunged over us. It hit the desk, sending splinters across the room. I rolled, grabbed the knife, and drove it into its neck. The blade met resistance, but pushed through. Blood sprayed. The creature roared and thrashed, knocking me back. Kara raised her shotgun and fired point blank into its skull. It dropped. She helped me to my feet. "How many?" "Too many." The radio crackled. A weak voice on the other end. "This is Officer Bradlin. We're pinned at Holcomb Lane. They're everywhere." Then silence. Kara grabbed the last few rounds and looked at me. "We can't save this town, Mercer." "I know," I said, but I wasn't leaving. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To finish it." I knew where the Alpha would be, not in the woods. In the old church on the ridge, the one built before Missoula was even a city. My father once said it was built over something older than faith. I took the truck and left Kara behind. As I drove up the dirt path, the sky seemed to bleed. Fires burned across the valley. The town was dying. I reached the church just past midnight. The door was open. Inside, candles burned in a circle around the altar. Symbols carved into the walls, fresh ones. Blood smeared in long, vertical lines. Animal? Human? Hard to tell. and at the center stood him, the Alpha, my father, what was left of him, tall, lean, wearing the same coat he had the day he vanished. His eyes burned gold, his mouth curved into something like a grin. "You came," he said. I raised the rifle, but I didn't fire, because behind him, stepping out of the shadows, were 3 others, smaller, younger. One of them was Jeremy, and his eyes were gold too. Jeremy didn't speak. He stood behind my father, arms slack, head tilted slightly to the side like an animal sensing a storm. The other 2 figures with him, a man and a woman, moved like predators wearing borrowed skin. But Jeremy, he still looked human, except for his eyes, gold, faintly glowing. "Why him?" I asked. "Why any of them?" My father stepped forward, hands open. "Because the blood calls to itself. You don't understand, Tobias. You never did. This isn't a curse. It's an inheritance." I raised the rifle. "That's not what you said when you trained me to kill them." He smiled, slow and grim. "Back then I thought we could resist it, pretend we were something else. But the older I got, the more I saw. This world doesn't belong to men anymore. It never did." He looked at Jeremy. "He's the future, not the end, the beginning." "You made a pact," I said. "You traded lives." "I made peace," he answered. "While I could." I scanned the room. No exits, no allies, just me and them. "You want me to join them?" "No," he said. "You already have. You just haven't accepted it." My left arm ached suddenly, the one scarred in the fight weeks earlier. I looked down and saw the skin pulsing under the fabric. The mark had grown, darker, twisting. I lowered the rifle, not because I believed him, because I felt it, in my bones, in the way I could hear their heartbeats, in the way my breath didn't fog in the cold anymore. Jeremy stepped forward. "They didn't kill me," he said softly. "They showed me what I was becoming. They stopped the pain." I shook my head. "That's not salvation. That's surrender." "They gave me a choice," he replied. "You didn't." His voice was sharper now, stronger, older. I remembered his face in the hospital, how it changed. I hadn't saved him. I'd brought him to the edge and left him to fall. The Alpha, my father, raised his hand. "I won't fight you, son," he said. "Not unless you make me." I gripped the knife on my belt. "I don't need you to fight me," I said. "I need you to tell me the truth." He paused. "About my mother." He looked away, and that told me everything. "She was one of them," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "She was marked at birth. I thought I could change her, hide her. But the pack came early. They wanted her back. So I ran. And she died because of you," I said. "She died because she refused to become what they wanted. She burned herself alive the night they came. And I buried her under the black pines." A memory surged, her voice faint, calling me from the woods as a child. I thought it was grief, now I knew it was warning. "So what am I?" I asked. He stepped closer. "You're the bridge. You're the firstborn of both bloodlines, human and pack. That's why they've waited." I felt it rising in my chest. Heat, rage, confusion. "They think you're their king," he added. "The heir." I pulled the knife. "I'm not their king." He didn't flinch. "But you're not just a hunter anymore, are you?" The moment shattered with the sound of breaking glass. Kara burst through the stained glass window with a Molotov in one hand and a flare in the other. The bottle flew, shattered against the altar, igniting the circle of symbols in flame. "Down!" I shouted. Jeremy screamed. The other 2 creatures turned, eyes wide as the fire spread fast. My father didn't move. He stood inside the burning circle, watching me, expression unreadable. Kara dragged me out through the front doors as the church began to collapse. Flames licking the rafters, howls echoing from inside. We ran, through snow and ash. Neither of us spoke until we reached the truck. Then I turned to her. "How did you know?" She opened the glove box. Inside was a worn photo. 2 kids, a boy and a girl, him with a wooden sword, her in a yellow dress. 12 years ago, she said. He took my brother. Said it was a bear attack. I saw the prints. I never forgot. You knew what he was. I knew what he became. I didn't know what you were. I looked down at my hands. I still don't. We sat in silence. Then I looked out the window and saw them. Figures on the ridge, watching, still alive, still waiting. For 3 days the snow didn't stop. The road out of Missoula was buried, the bridges collapsed from the weight of water and wind. Emergency lines were silent. The town wasn't just isolated. It had been cut off. On purpose. They were boxing us in. Kara and I took shelter in the basement of the fire station. Reinforced walls, enough supplies for a few days. I barely ate, couldn't sleep, not with the itching in my arm. The mark pulsed every time the wind howled. They're not done with you, Kara said on the second night. I know. What happens when the moon is full again? I didn't answer, because I already knew. On the fourth night, the dreams returned. My mother barefoot in the snow, her dress soaked in blood. She whispered words I didn't understand, then turned, and behind her, the pack. Not in beast form, but as men. Faces I recognized. My father, Jeremy, others, dozens, standing in the woods, waiting. When I woke, my arm was burning. I pulled off the bandage and saw the mark had changed again. No longer a twisted vein. Now it looked like a spiral, a complete circle, and in the center, a line cutting through. The symbol of the air. That night, the howling began. Not distant, not in the mountains, but just outside. Rattlesnake Ridge was burning again. We saw the glow through the station windows, 1 house at a time, then 2, then more. We knew what was coming. I loaded every weapon I had. Kara reinforced the doors. You could leave me here, she said. You know that, right? I looked her in the eye. I don't leave people behind. She nodded. Then let's make them bleed. The attack came just after midnight. 3 of them, no longer hesitant, no longer hiding. They came fast, furious, teeth bared, claws swinging. The first shattered the main door with a single blow. Kara opened fire, dropping it with 2 slugs to the chest. The second tackled me through a window. We rolled into the snow. I stabbed it twice in the ribs. It screamed, kicked me back, and lunged. I caught it mid-air and drove the silver blade through its eye. It thrashed, then went still. The third vanished into the dark. Coward or scout. We didn't wait. We ran for the woods. The trail to Marshall Mountain was steep, but I knew where it led. The old stone circle, the one from my father's journal, the place where pacts were sealed, the place where blood answered blood. We reached it just before the moon broke from behind the clouds, and there they were, the pack, all of them, 20, maybe more, men, women, all changed, standing upright, yellow eyes glowing, silent, and at the front, my father, no longer wearing human skin. He towered over the rest. Black fur matted with blood, mouth dripping, eyes locked on me. This is the end, Tobias, he said, voice guttural. You will choose. Join us or die. I stepped forward. Kara raised her weapon. I held out my hand. Don't, I said. This isn't your fight anymore. She hesitated, lowered the gun. I walked into the circle. Every step felt like fire in my chest. The mark on my arm glowed faintly. I stopped in front of him. "This isn't family," I said. "It's power," he replied. He lunged. The fight wasn't clean. It wasn't cinematic. It was primal. Claws raked flesh. Teeth tore through armor. I stabbed, shot, screamed. He threw me to the ground, tore open my shoulder. I drove the blade under his ribcage, twisted. He bit my throat. I jammed the broken rifle barrel through his chest. We fell together. When I opened my eyes, the moon was full. He was gone, his body already collapsing into ash. The pack stood silent. Then Jeremy stepped forward. He looked at me. "You're the alpha now." I didn't answer. I turned, walked past Kara, past the corpses, past the flame, back to the woods. I felt the blood burning inside me, not with rage, but with understanding. The mark didn't hurt anymore. The snow fell quietly, and in the distance, I heard the howls again. But this time, they weren't hunting. They were calling me home. Tobias's descent into the heart of Missoula's curse is a brutal reminder that some bloodlines are forged in nightmares, not flesh. The rise of the new alpha is only the beginning, and we'll be here, watching the shadows, waiting for what comes next. Like this video if the hunt left your heart pounding. Comment below, what moment chilled you the most? Share it with someone who still believes werewolves are just fairy tales. They need to know the truth runs deeper. And most importantly, if you're strong enough to face the moonlight, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and hit the bell, because some monsters only stay away when the fire of your screen keeps them at bay.